ready for Heritage Studies? All right, let's start not chapter 11. We're in chapter 2. Let's start lesson 11. This will be on page 34 in your reader book. And there's some pages that we're going to have today in your work text. There's 3 pages, but one of them we're going to kind of do together. The other page is a study guide page, one that's going to kind of put together everything we've been talking about the past couple of days so that I can grade it and make sure you're right where you need to be. All right, let's look at page 34. Now, Congress takes over Reconstruction. Remember, Reconstruction is the rebuilding of America after this, about 12 years after the Civil War, the next 12 years after that. Rebuilding everything physically, socially, and politically. Remember, we were just torn up. Now, remember how the President Lincoln, had been assassinated and the new president took over. Well, remember how he helped the South and he didn't really help the North? Well, we needed somebody who was going to help the whole nation together. Okay, so Congress is going to take over the Reconstruction rather than the president doing it. So let's look at the top of page 34. Okay, I want you to listen. I'm going to read this to you. I want you to listen. Find out how the Northerners, how they found out about those Southern laws and how they felt about it. Remember those laws we talked about yesterday? Those Southern laws for the freedmen were almost identical for when they were slaves. Now, in 1865, the president sent Carl Schurz to tour the South. Schurz had to report back to the president on how Reconstruction was doing in the South. After Carl Schurz returned to Washington, D.C., his report helped change Reconstruction. Schurz's report said that Johnson's decisions for Reconstruction didn't work. Southerners seemed convinced that they could go back to living the way they had before the war. The Southerners were also mistreating freedmen. Northern soldiers and Northern civilians, who had moved south to help the freedmen. A civilian is someone who is not serving in the army. Schurz was an abolitionist. In his report, he was most concerned about how freedmen were treated. Throughout the South, there were leaders who used to be Confederates. They passed many laws. These laws made the freedmen work as if they were still slaves. Many Southerners wanted to make the freedmen start working on plantations again. These Southerners tried to make this happen by passing laws. Often freedmen could not live in the cities. They also had to have a job. If a freedman had no job, he could be forced to work. Those who hired freedmen were allowed to whip them. The Southern laws also made freedmen unequal with other people in society. Freedmen were required to show extra respect to white people. Freedmen could not serve on juries. They were not allowed to testify in court against white people. So these things don't sound fair at all. But don't forget, I did tell you that there were things going on in the North. There were no laws against the black people or the freedmen in the North that I know of. There could have been. But they were treated unfairly a lot of times. They were treated differently a lot of times. Let's look at page 35. Now, this is where Congress is going to come in and say, okay, President, you are not doing what President Lincoln would want you to do. You are not doing America a favor. You are hurting us. So Congress is going to take over. So the top of page 35, when Northerners heard Schurz's report, they grew angry. They thought of the deaths of thousands of soldiers and Abraham Lincoln. The Northerners wanted those deaths to count for something. Most Northerners knew people who had fought in the Civil War. The North expected Southerners to admit to losing the war. Northerners believed that since the South lost, it should change. Congress met in late 1865. Northern congressmen wanted Reconstruction to change. First, they said certain men could not join Congress. These men who could not join were the newly elected representatives and senators from the states that used to be Confederate. The Northern congressman's decision made President Johnson unhappy. Then Congress passed 2 laws that caused Reconstruction to change. The first law strengthened a government organization called the Freedmen's Bureau. This powerful organization was supposed to help anyone who had lost his home during the Civil War. The second law Congress passed was the Civil Rights Bill. This law said that the freedmen were free from those unjust Southern laws. Now, even though I'm a Southerner, and that's where my ancestors basically came from, I love the South. I don't love slavery, and I don't agree with it, and I think it's mean and bad. And never would I want there to ever be a law to treat a person unjustly. I want laws to be right. And so anyway, so Congress was coming in and saying, okay, you Southern people, wait a minute. We're not going to help our country if they're treated unfairly down south and treated like slaves. We want them to be treated fairly all over the United States. So turn the page. All right, so we were talking about how they passed these laws. Now we're going to talk about how that happens. Let's look at page 36. Johnson tried to stop these two bills by vetoing them. He said that the laws were not necessary. Johnson believed that the states should govern themselves. He believed the national government shouldn't make decisions for the states, such as passing these laws. But Congress insisted on passing these laws. Congress said that the national government should provide a just government for every American. Since Johnson wouldn't work with Congress, they took away power over Reconstruction from the president. Congress passed the laws again. 2/3 of the congressmen voted for the laws, even though Johnson disapproved. Both bills became law. For the next several years, a small group of Republicans directed many of the Congress's decisions. They were called the Radical Republicans, and they wanted more freedom for the freedmen. Congress passed many laws. They wanted to improve life for all Americans. Now, you might sit there and say, wow, how could they pass laws that the president didn't agree with? Well, because since you asked, I'm so glad you asked, since our government is set up with our Constitution with 3 parts to our government, that means that none of those 3 parts can have too much power. Now, one can't pass a law unless this one agrees, but if this one disagrees and this one agrees, well, there is a certain way set up that they can still pass the law if it's a good law. So there's a way everywhere for a law to be passed even without the president wanting it to be. And that's if 2/3 of the Congress vote for it, which I know that's probably kind of out of your mind because those words are big. So what we're going to do is let's look at page 36, and it goes with what's on your page 16 in your book. It's the same picture. It's how a law is passed. Now I want you to look in your work textbook. Let's start at the top. You see where it says Congress? Now, Congress is made up of 2 parts, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay, those are the 2 parts. Now, you see where the president is? There's a picture of the White House. Now, the president can either sign it into law or veto. Now, go back up to Congress. You see House of Representatives? You see where it says no, yes, yes, no? Okay, so if the House of Representatives vote yes, follow that dotted line, it goes over to the Senate. If the Senate votes yes, follow that down, it goes to the president. Now, what happens is, in Congress, they make laws. If the House of Representatives says, yeah, that's a good law, we like it, we pass it, they send it on to the second part of Congress, which is Senate. And the Senate will look at that law and say, yeah, we like that law, we're going to pass that law, so let's send it to the president. So both the House of Representatives and the Senate, the Congress, will send it on to the president. If he likes the law and feels like it's a good law, he will sign it and it becomes a law. If he says, no, I don't like this law, then he vetoes it. So if he vetoes it, look where it goes back to. It goes back to Congress. Now, look where it says House of Representatives. If 2/3 of the House of Representatives and 2/3 of the Senate together, 2/3 of Congress, if they say, President, I'm sorry, you're overruled, then it becomes a law without the president liking it. He can veto it. Now, if it comes back and they don't have 2/3 of the vote, then it will not become law. It'll have to go all the way back, and they'll have to start back over. Now, I have a short video that I want to show you, and I'm going to put it on the screen here in just a second, but I want to tell you what your assignment is. Your assignment then is to, well, there is, on page 16, I guess we need to fill in the blanks that are missing. Okay, so let's look up here at the top. It says number these events in order. So the first thing to happen is a bill is written. You see where it says that? So put a number 1 there. Congress writes a bill. A bill is a law that's not a law yet. Okay? The second thing is Congress votes on the bill. That's number 2. Okay? The third thing is if both houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate, if both houses support the bill, it's sent to the president. That's the third thing that happens. The fourth thing that happens is if the president signs the bill, it becomes law. If the president vetoes it, it goes back to Congress. That's number 4. And then the last thing to happen, if 2/3 of Congress vote for the bill after the president vetoes it, it becomes the law. That's number 5. So it should be 3, 5, 1, 2, and 4. Okay, the video that I'm going to leave you with today is it's like a little funny little animated show with a song that will tell you how this becomes law. So actually, I don't think I'm going to play it on here. I think I'll put a link on your Google Classroom, and then when you're finished, you can watch that link. Just click on it, and it'll take you and let you watch that link. And it shows you how a bill becomes a law so that you can remember. Okay? So your assignment is to do the study guide, pages 17 and 18. Use your book. Be very careful and take it slowly. And then I want to see the pictures of it so that I can grade these pages. Okay? If you're having trouble with something, I want to know. All right? That's all for today.